Nairobi's evening lights glowed softly through the wide windows of Nia Mwen's apartment. The place was elegant but warm, soft cream walls, framed photos, and the faint scent of jasmine from her mother's favorite candle. She stood in silence, holding a framed picture of Esther and Michael Karanja, the couple who had raised her with so much love. It had only been a few weeks since they were laid to rest, and the loss still sat heavy in her chest. A gentle knock broke the quiet. Mr. Odieno, the family lawyer, stepped in holding a brown envelope. His tone was calm but kind. "Your parents wanted you to open this today," he said. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter in Esther's neat, looping script. "Our dearest Nia, we've left you a trust fund. Use it not to live large, but to live free. We love you endlessly." For a moment, the words blurred behind her tears. She pressed the letter to her chest, feeling both comforted and completely alone. Mr. Odieno cleared his throat gently. "The trust totals $4 million, he said. "You're the sole beneficiary." Nia's breath caught. $4 million. It didn't feel real. The Karanzas had never been flashy about money. They believed in education, kindness, and quiet generosity. She wasn't sure what live free meant, but she wanted to honor them. As she stood by the window, city lights flickering below, Nia had no idea that this inheritance, this final gift of love, was about to reopen a part of her past she thought was buried forever. A week after opening the letter, Nia was still trying to adjust to her new reality. The trust fund had changed everything and nothing at the same time. She still woke up missing her parents, still reached for her phone to text her mother out of habit, still felt the quiet echo of grief in every corner of her home. One morning, as she scrolled through her messages, a new text popped up from an unknown number. "We need to talk. I'm your father, Joseph." Her chest tightened. For a moment, she thought it was some kind of sick joke. Her biological father had vanished from her life before she could even speak his name. The Karanzas had told her little about him, only that he was young, lost, and unable to take care of a baby. She had never looked for him. Now he was looking for her. For hours, she stared at the message. Her mind spun with questions. Why now? How did he even get her number? What did he want? Against her better judgment, curiosity won. She texted back a short reply. "Where?" They agreed to meet at a small cafe on Riverside Drive the next day. When Nia arrived, her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. The cafe buzzed with soft music and clinking cups. She spotted him instantly, a tall man in a suit that looked expensive but didn't fit right, sitting like he owned the place. Joseph Oching stood as she approached, smiling too widely. "You look just like your mother," he said, reaching out a hand she didn't take. Nia sat down, her expression calm but her voice cold. "You abandoned me." He sighed dramatically, leaning back as if the weight of the past was too much to bear. "I was young, Nia. I made mistakes. But we're family. We can rebuild." The words rolled off his tongue like a rehearsed speech. He tried to hold her gaze, but something about him felt off. The way his eyes darted to her handbag, the way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. She stirred her coffee slowly. "You never tried to find me before. Why now?" He hesitated for just a second too long. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," he said finally. "When I heard about your parents, I realized I didn't want to lose you again." But Nia wasn't fooled. She saw through the smooth tone and the polished suit. He wasn't here out of love. He was here because he wanted something. After a few more minutes of empty talk, she stood up. "I don't know what you're really after," she said quietly, "but I'm not the little girl you walked away from." She left before he could answer. Outside, the Nairobi sun felt too bright, almost harsh. As she walked to her car, her phone buzzed again. Another message from him. "You'll see I deserve to be in your life, Nia." A chill ran down her spine. She didn't know why, but something told her this wasn't over. A few quiet days passed after that strange meeting at the cafe. Nia tried to push the encounter out of her mind, convincing herself that Joseph would disappear as suddenly as he had appeared. But peace didn't last long. One morning, as she sat at her kitchen table sipping tea, her phone rang. It was Mr. Odieno, the family lawyer. His voice was calm but heavy. "Nia," he said carefully, "I just received a notice from the High Court. Your biological father has filed a claim against your inheritance." For a moment, she didn't understand. Filed a what? "He's demanding half of the trust fund. $4 million, he says, should be shared. $2 million for him, $2 million for you." The teacup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "That's insane," she said, her voice shaking. "He gave me up. He has no right to anything my parents left me." Mr. Odieno sighed. "He's arguing that blood relation gives him entitlement to your assets. It's a weak case, but it's going to make noise." And he was right. Within hours, the story somehow leaked online. A tabloid headline screamed across social media. "Man claims daughter's $4 million inheritance after reuniting with her." Comments flooded in. "She owes her real father something. He's just greedy. He sold her and now wants her money." Typical rich girl drama. Nia scrolled through the posts, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. People who didn't know her parents, were now debating her life like it was a TV show. Some called her heartless, others praised her for standing her ground. But the noise was deafening. That evening, Mr. Odieno came by to go over the legal papers. He's hired a lawyer, a very aggressive one, he said. They're claiming emotional distress, saying he's trying to reconnect, but you're shutting him out. Nia laughed bitterly. He's not reconnecting. He's calculating. This is all about money. She could still see that look in Joseph's eyes at the cafe, sharp, hungry, pretending to care. Mr. Odieno nodded. We'll fight it. The Carranza's estate is protected by law, and you were legally adopted. He doesn't stand a chance if we present the facts clearly. Still, Nia couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How can someone who never bought me a toy, never visited me once, suddenly think he deserves millions? She asked quietly. The lawyer looked at her kindly. Some people see money as redemption. Others see it as opportunity. You have to decide which story the world will remember, his version or yours. That night, as Nairobi's city lights flickered outside her window, Nia made a decision. She wasn't going to let this become another headline about greed or family drama. This was about truth, about honoring the people who truly raised her. She opened her laptop and began gathering every document, every photo, every memory of the Carranza's love. If Joseph wanted a fight, she would give him one. But she'd fight it her way, with dignity, truth, and the strength her parents taught her. Preparing for the court case felt like reopening old wounds Nia had buried long ago. Mr. Odieno advised her to collect every record from her adoption, so she spent long nights going through dusty files, faded photographs, and yellowed papers her parents had carefully kept. At first, it was just routine, signatures, certificates, legal forms, but then she found a folder marked confidential, adoption agency record. Her heartbeat quickened as she opened it. Inside were several typed pages and one handwritten receipt. As she read the details, her stomach turned. It said Joseph Oching had received a payment of 50,000 shillings from an unnamed agency at the time of her adoption. The reason listed was chillingly simple: transfer of parental rights. She stared at the words, feeling sick. He hadn't given her up because he couldn't afford to raise her, or because he wanted a better life for her. He had sold her. She could almost hear her late mother's voice, soft and loving. You were our miracle, Nia. The truth hit her like a wave. Her miracle began as someone else's transaction. She needed answers. The next morning, she drove to the old orphanage where she had lived as a baby. The place was quiet, its paint faded but still welcoming. Inside, she found Sister Angela, the nun who had cared for her in her earliest days. The elderly woman recognized her instantly, her eyes lighting up. Nia Mwend, she said warmly. You grew into such a fine woman. Nia smiled faintly. Sister, I came because I need to know the truth about my father, about why he gave me up. Sister Angela's smile faded. She motioned for Nia to sit, then clasped her hands tightly. Your father wasn't poor, she said softly. He came here with nice clothes, a gold watch, and a story about needing to start over. He said you were holding him back. He wanted a new life. Nia blinked hard, trying to stay composed. He called me a burden? The nun nodded sadly. Yes. I remember writing that word in my report. It broke my heart even then. For a moment, silence filled the room. Nia's grief slowly hardened into determination. He called me a burden, she said quietly, her voice steady now. I'll show him I became a legacy. Sister Angela reached out, squeezing her hand. Your parents saw your worth, child. Don't let this pain steal that from you. Nia thanked her and left with a copy of the orphanage's old file. Back home, she placed it beside the receipt she had found earlier. Together, they painted a clear, painful picture, proof that her father had willingly sold his rights to her. She scanned every document, marking them for her lawyer. This wasn't just evidence, it was her story, her truth. As she looked at the stack of papers on her desk, she whispered to herself, this is how I fight. Not with anger, but with truth. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a calm sense of power. The past had hurt her, but now it was going to set her free. The courtroom in Nairobi was packed. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras ready, whispering as though they were waiting for a movie to begin. The case had already made national headlines, and everyone wanted to see the young woman fighting her long-lost father for millions. Nia sat at the front beside her lawyer, dressed in a simple black dress. She looked calm, but inside her heart beat fast. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room. The doors opened, and Joseph Oching walked in like a man stepping onto a stage. He wore a sharp navy suit, polished shoes, and an expression carefully arranged to show just the right amount of regret. His lawyer, a slick-talking man with a practiced smile, followed close behind. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The room fell silent. The case began. Joseph's lawyer started first. Your Honor, he said smoothly, my client is not here to fight. He only wishes to reconcile with his daughter and to share, fairly, in the blessings she has received. Mr. Oching regrets his past, but family cannot be erased by time or paperwork. Nia clenched her hands together, but stayed silent. She didn't need to defend herself yet. She wanted the truth to do that. When it was her turn, she rose slowly. Her voice was steady, her eyes clear. "Your Honor," she said, "blessings are earned through love, not blood. The people who raised me gave me everything, not because they had to, but because they chose to." There was a quiet murmur from the audience. Even a few reporters lowered their cameras, listening. Mr. Odieno, her lawyer, stood and began presenting their evidence. He placed a stack of documents before the judge, adoption papers, legal forms, and finally, one small, worn receipt. "This," he said clearly, "is proof that Mr. Oching did not surrender his daughter out of hardship or love. He sold his parental rights for 50,000 shillings to an underground adoption agency." Gasps filled the room. Reporters began typing furiously. Joseph's confident smile disappeared. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses to read the paper. "Is this your signature, Mr. Oching?" he asked. Joseph hesitated, then stammered. "That was years ago. I didn't know what I was signing." But the judge's tone sharpened. "This document clearly states you accepted payment in exchange for relinquishing your parental rights. That means you forfeited all legal and moral claims to this child." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "You did not give her up. You sold her." The courtroom went dead silent. Joseph's face turned pale, his jaw tightening as cameras clicked. Nia sat quietly, her expression unreadable. Inside, she felt a storm of emotions, pain, relief, and pride. Not because she had won yet, but because the truth was finally out. The judge turned back to her. "Miss Mwend," he said gently, "your parents gave you a home and a future. The law, and this court, recognizes them as your true family." As the gavel came down, the reporters erupted, the headlines already writing themselves. And for the first time in a long while, Nia exhaled. The ghosts of her past were finally losing their power. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Newspapers, TV channels, and social media all screamed the same shocking headline. "Father sells daughter, then sues for her inheritance." It spread like wildfire. Talk shows dissected every detail of the courtroom drama. News anchors replayed clips of Nia walking calmly out of court, her chin high, surrounded by flashing cameras. She hadn't said a word to the press, but her silence spoke louder than any interview. Within days, the internet turned her into a national symbol. Hashtags like #DaughterOfStrength and #NiamwenStory trended across Kenya and beyond. People admired how she carried herself with grace even when her most painful truth had been dragged into public view. Strangers filled her social media pages with messages of love and support. "You're proof that blood isn't everything. You turned pain into power. Your parents would be so proud." Still, not everyone was kind. A few voices online accused her of humiliating her father or chasing attention. But Nia didn't respond to any of it. She knew her parents had raised her to stay grounded, no matter how loud the world got. Soon, brands started calling, clothing companies, talk shows, even a documentary team. They all wanted a piece of her story. Mr. Odieno advised her to accept at least one offer, to control the narrative. But Nia refused. "I don't want fame," she said quietly. "I just want peace." That night, she sat alone in her apartment, looking at the city lights twinkling outside. Her phone suddenly buzzed. It was an unknown number. For a moment, she thought it might be another journalist, but when she answered, a familiar, bitter voice filled her ear. "You embarrassed me," Joseph shouted. "You think you're better than me now, don't you? Because they're all calling you some kind of hero." Nia closed her eyes, her voice calm but steady. "No, Joseph," she said softly. "I don't think I'm better than you. I'm just different." There was a pause on the other end, then she added quietly, "I didn't sell family for cash." Before he could respond, she ended the call and blocked the number. Her hands shook a little, but she felt lighter, as if closing that call had also closed a door she never wanted reopened. She sat in silence for a while, thinking about everything that had happened. The trial, the headlines, the messages from people she'd never met. None of it could undo what Joseph had done, but at least now, the truth was out. The world finally knew her story, not as a scandal, but as a testament to love, resilience, and choice. As she looked out over Nairobi's skyline, Nia whispered a quiet thank you, to her parents, to herself, and to the strength that had carried her through. Then she turned off her phone, letting the city hum fade into peace. For the first time in a long while, she felt free. Weeks passed, and the chaos around Nia's story finally began to quiet down. The reporters moved on to new scandals, the headlines faded, and her name slowly disappeared from the trending list. But for Nia, the silence was not empty. It was healing. She spent long days thinking about her parents, Esther and Michael Karanja, and the kind of people they were. They never cared about fame or fortune. They cared about impact. They had spent their lives helping others, especially children who had no one. Now, Nia wanted to continue that legacy. One afternoon, she sat by her mother's old writing desk, staring at the framed letter that had started it all. Use it not to live large, but to live free. The words suddenly made perfect sense. Freedom wasn't about wealth or revenge. It was about purpose. That's when the idea came to her. She would use part of her inheritance to build something lasting, something that gave children the same love and chance she had received. Within months, her plans took shape. Lawyers helped with the paperwork, architects drafted designs, and by the end of the year, the Karanja Foundation for Abandoned Children was born. The foundation's mission was simple: to give orphaned and abandoned kids access to education, healthcare, and emotional support. It started small, just one center in Nairobi, but Nia poured her heart into it. She visited local orphanages, met with social workers, and spoke to children who reminded her of herself at that age. Quiet, unsure, but full of potential. The day of the launch press conference was bright and warm. Cameras flashed as Nia stepped onto the small stage in front of the foundation's new building. Behind her, a banner read "The Karanja Foundation. Hope lives here." She took a deep breath, looking at the crowd of reporters, guests, and children seated in the front row. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "This foundation is named after the two people who saved my life, my parents, Esther and Michael Karanja. They taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about love, kindness, and second chances." She paused, glancing at the smiling faces of the children. Then she said the words that would later go viral across social media. "Family is not who gives you blood, it's who gives you a chance." The audience erupted in applause. Some people wiped away tears. Reporters captured every moment, their headlines already forming. Within hours, clips of her speech spread across the internet. People called her an inspiration, a voice for every adopted and abandoned child who had ever felt unwanted. Messages poured in from across Africa, parents wanting to volunteer, donors offering support, and young adults sharing their own adoption story. The foundation quickly became a symbol of hope. That evening, after everyone had left, Nia walked through the quiet halls of the new building. Children's drawings already hung on the walls. She smiled, touching one with her fingertips, a crayon picture of a smiling family holding hands. "This," she whispered to herself, "is what freedom looks like." For the first time, Nia felt her parents' love in every heartbeat of the place. Their legacy, and hers, had just begun. Months passed, and the Karanja Foundation was thriving. The halls were full of laughter, the classrooms filled with eager children, and every wall carried pieces of Nia's story, not in words but in spirit. She spent her days working with her team, meeting donors, and checking on the children herself. For the first time in years, she felt completely at peace. One late afternoon, as the sun painted Nairobi in shades of gold, a security guard came to her office door. "Madam Nia," he said softly, "there's a man outside asking for. Says his name is Joseph." Her heart paused for a second. It had been months since the court case, months since that last angry phone call. Still, a part of her had always known he might show up one day. She nodded and followed the guard to the gate. There he was, thinner, older, and nothing like the man who had stood so confidently in court. His once sharp suit hung loosely on his frame, his eyes sunken but honest in a way she hadn't seen before. He stepped forward, his voice quiet and shaky. "I'm sorry, Nia," he said. "I thought money would fill my regrets. It didn't. I lost everything trying to chase what didn't matter." For a moment, she said nothing. She just studied him, the man who had sold her, betrayed her, and tried to claim what wasn't his. But now he looked broken, not dangerous. "I forgave you a long time ago," she said finally, her tone calm but firm. "But forgiveness isn't a ticket back into my life." Joseph lowered his head. "I understand," he whispered. "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." Nia nodded slowly. Then she reached into her handbag and pulled out a small white envelope. "There's something I want you to have," she said, handing it to him. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph, a baby wrapped in a soft blanket, smiling in the arms of Esther and Michael Curran. "They were my real family," Nia said gently, "and I'm proud of the life they gave me." Joseph's eyes glistened as he stared at the photo. His lips trembled, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked like a man who truly understood what he had lost. Not money, but love. "Goodbye, Joseph," Nia said quietly. She turned and walked back toward the building as the children's laughter echoed through the courtyard. He stood there for a long time, holding the photo to his chest before finally walking away. Back inside, Nia stood by her office window and watched the sunset fade over Nairobi. The sky glowed in soft orange and pink, peaceful, calm, complete. She felt lighter than ever before. That day, she realized forgiveness wasn't about letting someone back in. It was about freeing herself from the weight of their choices. And she had finally done that. A full year had passed since the foundation opened its doors, and the Karanja Foundation was now more than just a project. It was a movement. What began as one building in Nairobi had grown into a beacon of hope. The walls were bright with color, the classrooms filled with laughter, and every corner carried the energy of new beginning. For Nia, it felt like her parents' love had taken on a new life, spreading far beyond what they had ever imagined. On a warm Saturday morning, the foundation was buzzing with excitement. It was the anniversary celebration, 1 year of changing lives. Volunteers and staff hurried about, arranging chairs and decorating the courtyard. Hundreds of children sat waiting, their faces glowing with joy and curiosity. At the center of the main hall, a new mural stretched across the wall behind the stage. Painted in bold, graceful letters were the words, "Born from pain, built from love." Around it were colorful handprints, the children's, representing every life the foundation had touched. Nia stood quietly for a moment before stepping up to the podium. She wore a simple white dress and a soft smile, her heart full. On the wall beside the mural hung 2 framed photos of Esther and Michael Karanja, her parents, her forever heroes. When the applause faded, she began to speak. Her voice carried warmth and calm. "A year ago, this place was just an idea," she said. "It started with a letter from my parents, a reminder to live free, not by wealth, but by purpose. I didn't know then how much those words would change me." She looked out at the sea of young faces, some smiling, some holding back tears. "I was once a child like many of you," she continued. "I didn't know where I truly belonged. But 2 people, Esther and Michael Karanja, showed me that love is what makes a family. They taught me that wealth isn't what's left in a bank, it's what you leave in hearts." The room grew quiet. Even the smallest children seemed to understand the weight of her words. "They gave me a chance," Nia said softly. "And because of them, I can give others a chance too. That's what this foundation is about, turning pain into purpose, turning loss into love." As she finished, the audience erupted into applause. Some of the staff members wiped away tears. The children stood, clapping and cheering, their voices filling the room like music. Nia smiled, her eyes glistening. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, a gentle warmth, as if her parents were there with her, watching proudly. She glanced at their photos and whispered, "We did it." Outside, the sound of laughter drifted through the open windows. The world had once known her story for its pain, but now it would remember her for her purpose. And as Nia stood beneath the mural, born from pain, built from love, she knew the circle was complete. Her story had come home. The city was quiet that evening, painted in gold and soft pink as the sun began to set over Nairobi. Nia stood on the rooftop of the Karanja Foundation, the wind gently moving through her hair. Below her, the courtyard was alive with laughter, children playing, teachers chatting, music floating up from the celebration below. She smiled, taking in the sound. It was the sound of everything she had fought for. She looked out at the skyline, tall buildings glowing against the fading sky, and for the first time, she felt completely at peace. The chaos, the courtroom battles, the pain of her past, it all felt like another lifetime now. She wasn't the lost girl searching for belonging anymore. She had built her own place in the world, one filled with love, purpose, and freedom. As the evening breeze carried the laughter upward, Nia pulled a folded letter from her pocket, the same one her adoptive parents had written to her a year before. The edges were worn now, but the words still filled her heart every time she read them. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "You told me to live free. I finally understand. Freedom isn't about money. It's about peace." Her eyes glistened, but her smile stayed steady. Then her voice, calm and reflective, filled the air, a quiet voiceover as if speaking to her younger self. "I was once the girl no one wanted. Then love chose me, and that changed everything." The camera pans upward, the Nairobi skyline glowing brighter as the lights below spell out the Karanja Trust for hope in shining gold. And beneath that golden glow, the laughter of children rises into the night, a sound of love that will never fade.